If your friends are overweight, that too ups the odds you'll pack on pounds. Those effects have been shown in studies, and now researchers have identified another seemingly contagious quality: exercise. The investigators analyzed the running activity of more than 1 million individuals worldwide who used an exercise tracking device for 5 years, and they used weather patterns as a way to randomly examine different parts of that global network.
To answer these questions, Foster and his colleagues reconstructed the history of atmospheric carbon dioxide for the last 420 million years. They compiled roughly 1,500 estimates of CO2 concentrations from 112 previous studies. When the researchers combined these data, they found that atmospheric carbon dioxide went up and down over time, but that in general it gradually declined from almost 3,000 parts per million down to less than 300 parts per million before humans started burning fossil fuels.
The sun is now brighter than it was 200 million years ago or 400 million years ago. That radiative forcing from CO2 in the future is going to be that much more potent. And that we thought was quite a strong message that hadn't been noted before. It's more of a sort of cautionary note that in the absence of any action, we will be entering a world quite rapidly in the next 150 years where the climate is receiving a magnitude of forcing that, as far as we know, it hasn't received for 420 million years. It's outside the bounds at which the Earth's normally functioning.
She and colleagues studied newborn male mice and their mothers that were separated from each other, which caused them both to experience traumatic stress. Those male mice and their male offspring displayed trauma symptoms, which made them different from other mice that had not been separated from their mothers. But when these symptomatic mice were exposed to positive experiences, their behavior changed, as did the fate of their offspring.
However, we've already started to reverse that trend. If we continue on a business as usual scenario, by the middle of this century, CO2 could reach levels not seen in 50 million years, according to Foster's reconstruction. That's long before humans evolved, back when the climate was much warmer and there were no large ice sheets at the poles. If we continue on that trajectory, by the year 2250, concentrations could approach what they were in the Triassic, 200 million years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the Earth.
The researchers prepared a bunch of increasingly squishy silicone surfaces and released drops of ethanol onto them from different heights. They captured video of the splashes with a super slow-motion camera that records more than 100,000 frames per second. And they found that the drops eventually stopped splashing on the softest surfaces. So far, that all sounds predictable, but computer models of the splashes revealed interesting details.
Another alleged value of being a passenger rather than a driver is more productivity. You could work rather than concentrate on driving. But most people might not spend their newfound free time in self-driving cars whittling down their to-do lists. The researchers surveyed people in the US, Australia, China, India, Japan, and the UK, and about 62% of respondents said self-driving cars would not make them more productive. For one thing, 23% of the group said they won't ride in a self-driving car in the first place.
But greenhouse gases aren't the only factor impacting Earth's climate. The sun also plays a major role. It's grown brighter over time, offsetting most of the cooling related to dropping CO2 levels, Foster's team found. And that fact has important implications for modern climate change, because while we're headed toward a world with CO2 levels similar to what they were in the distant geologic past, it won't just be like rewinding the clock.
At the moment the blob of liquid makes contact with the surface, the bottom of the drop flattens out and the pressure increases. The ring of pressure spreads towards the drop's edges. If the surface is too hard, the ring of high pressure creates tiny droplets that explode from the main drop's edges. But the softest surfaces deform in response to the drop hitting them, and that prevents the pressure from getting high enough to cause that explosion.
By the summer, the sea ice begins to melt and break apart. Deprived of access to the tasty seals, polar bears spend the summer fasting. At least that's what's supposed to happen. As the planet warms, the warmer ice-free season is getting longer and longer. So what's a hungry bear to do? Scientists once thought that polar bears might survive by supplementing their pinniped diet by turning to terrestrial foods like snow geese, their eggs, and caribou.
Turns out, though, it's not the flies, but a flower that has the last word in this tale of trickery, because researchers have now discovered that the flowers of a South African plant, called the parachute plant, produce nearly 3 dozen of the 90-some compounds in that honeybee alarm call, meaning they mimic the scent of a honeybee in danger to lure in and temporarily trap the flies as a pollination ploy.